All right, so in class we have been talking about one-step equations, and many of you have gotten really good at recognizing the operation that's happening in the one step and then doing the inverse operation. Some students, however, could probably benefit from a little extra help. So over the break, I started to think, how else can we look at one-step equations that might help students who are still struggling with looking for the operation and performing the inverse? And so I started thinking about fact families. All right. So if you can recall, at some point, your teacher probably taught you about fact families at a lower grade. And for some people, they build triangles. Some people build houses. And so, for instance, if I wanted to do a fact family involving the numbers 1, the number 6, and the number 7, you'd build inside your house something that says 1 plus 6 equals 7. 6 plus 1 equals 7. And then you may say 7 minus 1 equals 6, or 7 minus 6 equals 1. And so these are your fact families. And at the top here we have addition. And we know the inverse of addition is subtraction. All right. So when we think about one-step equations, imagine now if all of my 6's were to become the letter Z. And I'm only going to do the Z's that are on the left side of the equation. So for instance, in this addition one, I could write something that says 1 plus the variable Z equals 7. All right. So in this case, I'm using addition, so I could do the inverse operation, or recognizing my facts families, I may say, hey, 1 plus what number equals 7? And obviously it's 6. Or I could either subtract 1 from both sides, which we see here, 7 minus 1. 1 minus 1 is, that cancels out, bring down my Z. And Z equals 6. So a lot of times when you're doing one-step equations, it becomes so important that you have good fluency in your addition, subtraction facts, or multiplication and division facts. All right. So let's say if we were to do a fact family of multiplication. All right. And I'm going to do the fact family. Build me another house here. Make it just a little bit bigger because multiplication will end up with bigger numbers. And no, my house is not the cutest house, so I apologize for that. All right. But let's do 4, 5, and obviously 4 times 5 is 20 would be my fact family. All right. So I could say 4 times 5 equals 20. I can say 5 times 4 equals 20. Or instead of multiplication, I can do the inverse, and what's division? And so then I would do 20 divided by 4 equals 5. 20 divided by 5 equals 4. And so believe it or not, this simple skill that you learned in, say, 3rd grade, maybe even 2nd grade, is something that's still valuable and useful for you to now. So let's say, once again, I'm going to take the number 5 this time, and that's going to be my variable. So I'm going to turn my 5's into Z's, with the exception of the one where it's on the, I'm not going to touch the one where the z would be on the other side of the equation. All right, for the time being. All right, so how might this look algebraically? 4 times z equals 20. And that's the same thing. 4 times what number equals 20? All right. These are the same, but we don't put our variable in front of our coefficient. We always put the coefficient first. And this is multiplication. All right. And the inverse of multiplication is division. So then I could then divide both sides, which is what we've done in class, by the coefficient. All right. And so then now we have 20 divided by 4, which is the same thing here. This is our 20 divided by 4. All right. And that will solve it for z. All right. And we can see that z equals 5. All right. But what if it was already set up as a division problem? All right. So what if we had 20 divided by z equals 4. All right. So once again, sometimes you think like, oh wow, I'm really stuck. But the same thing, 20 divided by what number is 4? All right. Again, if you're real fluent with your fact families, 20 divided by 5 would be 4. So we just want to be really, really careful. Dig deep into some skills that you have from as early as 2nd grade of these fact families. And the one-step equations will become simpler for you. Now, I want to do some that involve decimals because I still think some students need a review over decimal or fractions. So give me a moment to clear this board here. All right, and now I just want to talk about when we're talking about decimals or fractions. All right, so let's go a couple things. When we're adding decimals, all right, so if we're adding 3.2 plus 1.47, it's important that you remember that we have to line up our decimals when we're adding. All right. For students who are still struggling with this, what I recommend that you do is draw your decimal line. All right. We did this in class. Just draw your decimal. So now I can line it up. I've got 3, 2, and I have 1 and 4/7. All right. And some people says, but wait a minute, there's an empty space here. What do we do with that? So we're just going to annex a 0. All right, and then we can add it. 0 plus 7 is 7. 2 plus 4 is 6. Here's my decimal line. I'm going to bring my decimal there. And 3 plus 1 is 4. All right, so be very careful. The same would be true if I were subtracting. Let's say if I had 2.5 minus 1.02. All right, same thing. Sometimes students want to line up the one with the most digits on top, but we're going to line it up just the way it's written. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put my decimal line in here. This is what's being subtracted, so we're going to go here. 2.5, line it up, 102. Once again, I don't have a digit here, so I'm just going to annex a 0. All right. Oftentimes I tell students when you're talking about decimals, sometimes if it helps, think of it in terms of money. All right, that's very easy. $2.50 minus $1.02. All right. And then that makes it easy because if I have 50 cents and I spend 2 cents, Well, that leaves me with 48 cents. All right. And $2 and minus $1 leaves me with $1. So I have $1.48. When it's possible and you're working with decimals, think about money. All right. So that's where we're at with our one-step equations. I'd like for you to maybe revisit this video, look at it again as you review, as we move into further into our algebra and our equations.